If you've ever wanted to write a novel, it's time to cut through the noise and follow a trusted guide. I've been following Brad Pauquette's advice for over a year now. He helped me finish my novel that's coming out in October, and now you can learn everything he taught me through his new book, The Novel Matrix, the complete novel writing guide. Find The Novel Matrix by Brad Pauquette on Amazon today. Welcome to this special Friday with Friends edition of More Than a Song. And with me today is my friend, Brad Pauquette, here to talk about his faith, his new book, and of course, God's Word. Welcome, Brad.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Michelle. I'm really happy to be here.
I'm so glad you're here. And we have been friends for over a year now. I actually did some research to go back to our first email exchanges back in March of 2023. I had been a member of your the company and some of the resources that are available to aspiring authors there. And I reached out to you for a developmental editor recommendation. And you said, what's your idea? And maybe it could be me. And so then we started a relationship from there, and you acted as book coach and developmental editor. But the thing I value most, and we talked a little bit about it before we hit record, was just that I feel like we've become friends, even though we've never met each other in a face-to-face other than Zoom calls like this, just as a brother in Christ. And so I'm really excited for my audience to get to know my friend, Brad. So again, thank you for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, that's 100% mutual. It's been just a tremendous privilege to be able to work with you, Michelle, and to see your book develop. And I don't know if we're talking about that publicly yet, are we?
It's fine. Yeah. My listeners know I'm working on it. Yeah.
Okay.
And I've worked out a few things. So yeah, feel free. Yeah. It's going to come out into the world because of you. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. But no, it's been just a tremendous privilege to work with you and to get to know you. And I even feel like I know your family, Michelle, and I've barely ever seen their faces. So that's really cool.
Yeah, it's just it's a joy to have this kind of technology to get to know each other, to share the skills and the skill sets that God has given each one of us. And I can't wait for my audience to get to know you. So before we jump into the thing, I really had you come on because I want to talk about your new book. But before we ever get to that, I really want to ask you, as a follower of Christ, why do you read the Bible?
Yeah, that's such a great question. And I was thinking about that. And the first things that come to mind are probably the obvious answers, right? Like it's a really healthy discipline and to be obedient to the Lord. And it's a great way to start your day, right? Like all those things are true and probably are at the top of the list. But I think one of the things that the Lord has really impressed on me over the past years is from the overflow of the heart, the mouth speaks. Right. And especially as an author and a content creator and a mentor and a coach to people, everything that comes out of my mouth all day long is a reflection of what's inside my heart. And so really from a practical perspective in the kind of life I lead as a creator and what I do, that's so hugely important to me is that I want to make sure that I am putting good stuff in. We hear that about AI a lot. Like that's part of the advice for AI is garbage in, garbage out, right? You have to be good at putting prompts into AI or you're not going to get good stuff out. But how much more is that true of human beings, right? Like the stuff that we pile into our heart is eventually what's going to come brimming over. So I'd like that to look like Jesus.
In fact, you've actually challenged me a lot on that, just as a book coach and as a mentor, to remind me to stay in God's word so that when I am creating, it is Him that is overflowing. So as we move on, of course, you're reading God's word, and so good things are going in, and hopefully out of the overflow of that, good things are coming out. And what brings you the most joy as you interact with God's word?
Probably the thing that continues to impress me about the Bible is I'm always finding something new. At this point, I've been reading the Bible for a while, and I think I've made it through a few times. But every time I'll revisit a passage I've read what feels like 100 times before, and the Holy Spirit will reveal something that I never noticed, right? And it'll feel like there's almost like a personal word in the Bible that speaks directly to me. And for me, that's nothing short of miraculous. Like that's proof right there that the Holy Spirit that the text itself is a vessel of the Holy Spirit, you know?
Yeah, I also appreciate your willingness to share those new insights. I hope that my audience will connect with you and maybe subscribe to your blog and things like that. But I have copied and pasted some of those insights that God has given you and sent them to friends, even that aren't
Oh, that's cool.
necessarily writers. And I hope that for all of our audiences and listeners to recognize that God is continuing to speak through His Word and continuing to reveal things to us in new ways, and that it can be exciting. And then it's up to us to share with a friend. That's something I
Right.
encourage my my listeners to do as well. So you have just released a new book into the world. You have you're an owner of a small business. You are a father or a husband. What at this stage of your walk with the Lord, at this stage of your career, kind of what has brought you to this point in your walk with God? Just I guess a little bit of your testimony and your career progress that brings you to this moment in time.
I grew up in the church. My dad is a pastor, and so I've always been in that environment. And so when I went off to college, I think I did what a lot of people do, which is I kind of had to test it out for myself, you know. And I never would have considered myself to have left the faith or like renounced my faith or anything. But I definitely, my lifestyle looked more like the world than it did like the Word of God for a long time, at least for several years. And at one point, a friend of mine died in the war in Iraq. And to say he was a friend is a misnomer. He was actually like my high school enemy. I don't know if that's a guy thing or not, but like, you know, there's just like one person in high school that, man, you just can't stand them. You just can't get along with them. And after high school, I met him a couple times. It turns out he was actually an okay dude, but he was in the army and he died in Iraq. And that really just brought something home for me. Again, like it wasn't like I was close to this guy. It wasn't like I was heartbroken for the relationship necessarily. But as I looked at my life, I realized that not only had I never done anything that would change this man's eternal fate, and you know, as best as I know, wouldn't be a positive one. Not only had I never done anything, but potentially I'd maybe even led him in the wrong direction, you know, or given him a sour taste of Christians. And so when that happened, I really had to come to terms with who I wanted to be, you know, and who I wanted to be moving forward. And so, you know, I gave my life to Christ when I was like 5 years old or something, and I think that counted. But that was really the moment that I feel like I really gave my all to Jesus. I really decided to say yes and everything. And I think my wife and I, Melissa and I, we've had a lot of adventures. We've done a lot of really cool stuff. You know, we've written books and owned restaurants and started companies and all this stuff. And all of it with Jesus in mind as part of it. And I think one of the ways that God uses us is that we are really good at saying yes. We're really good at just saying yes and going for it and trusting Him with the results and just keep showing up, you know, and even when it doesn't necessarily work out like we expected or we hoped, to just continue to put our trust in Jesus, right? And say, yes, you know, I'll be here tomorrow too. And I'm going to trust that as long as I do my best, God knew who I am before He invited me into this, right? And He knew my shortcomings and all those things. So as long as I do that, I'm going to trust Him with the results. And even if it doesn't look like what I would have picked, I'm going to trust that Him and His greater wisdom and providence, that, you know, it's what He wanted. And so that's brought us to the past 5 years. I'd worked in the publishing industry for 10 years, mostly as like a consultant and an independent professional, and started a couple companies in that process. And 5 years ago, we said yes to this ministry that God called us into. Yeah, if I had to just summarize it and give it the podcast, the single question podcast version, that's kind of what brings me here is I think being a person that says yes again and again.
It's so funny that you say that, because I literally had a conversation this morning with a friend who God told her to do something and she told him no. And then she said, but He's gracious and He's patient and He's kind with us even. So if you are one of those people who said, no, I'm not a yes, He's patient with you. And if you're a yes, He's patient with you too. So thank you for sharing that. And this
Absolutely.
yes has brought you to a place where you have amassed knowledge, and now you have put it into book form and released it to the world. I've shared it a little bit on my blog and on some social media, but when I shared it, and as I wish I had a copy. I do have a copy. I don't have it with me. Because I have,
Yeah, one here that I can
when
hold
you
up. There you
open
go.
it, when you open it, Michelle Nezat has some words in there of like,
That's right. She does.
I
Yeah.
was so excited.
She's one of the famous people in the beginning.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
Thank you for using that. But when I've shared it, I really mean it in that as I read through the words again, I was like, yep, he told me that. Yep, he taught me that. Yep, I had to learn that the hard way. Yep, I thought I did it. And he was like, yeah, you didn't quite do it. And so all of this advice that Brad has put into the novel matrix that you put into this book is the stuff that you teach at the company, is the stuff that you teach, people, any of your customers as book coach and all of that. So tell us a little bit about the story behind the novel matrix.
Yeah, absolutely. And it actually ties, it's kind of a continuation of my testimony. I really think that this book is something that God put on my heart, even to the point of disobedience. Like I've had this book mostly written for about 3 years, and I've kind of been just dragging my feet on it. I have this really good excuse that I have to help all these other people with their books, you
Right.
know?
Thank you for that.
Yeah, exactly. So I've really been dragging my feet on it. But it's something that God really brought all the information and all the parts. And so, like I mentioned a moment ago, I worked in the secular publishing industry for about 10 years. And I really came in through a different path than most people. I didn't get an MFA in creative writing at some fancy school and then go work in New York City or something like that. Rather, I was invited in when ebooks were just becoming a new thing. And really, I was invited in because they thought I was a nerd more than because they thought I'd be good at stories or something. But they just thought, here's this young kid. I was making websites and things like that. Perhaps he could help us with this ebook, because there were so few people really in the world that wanted to work on ebooks in like 2008. Everybody thought it was a fad or something like that.
They were
So
hoping. Some of the traditional
yeah,
publishers, I think, were
exactly.
hoping. Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. Well, and that's really it. You see, the traditional publishing world has always been kind of reluctantly adopting this stuff, like ebooks and even audiobooks and all these other things. And because I kind of came in through that technology door, it really put me in a position to be able to lead with the market and say, well, I don't really care how we're supposed to do it or how we used to do it. What's the best way to do it right now? And so, God really opened one door after another after that initial ebook project for me to expand my role in the publishing industry. And then I ended up spending most of that 10 years as a developmental editor. So doing exactly the stuff we've been doing together, Michelle. We're taking people's stories and helping them to punching holes in it, basically, and then helping them to learn how to fix those holes. And when I started doing it, I'll be honest, I don't think I really knew what I was doing. I had kind of an intuitive ability to do this, but I couldn't explain why your story was broken. I could tell you where it was broken and what to fix, but not always why. But over that 10 years, God really helped me to develop a complete system of how to evaluate a story and how to make it work, and what stories need, what things your reader will know intuitively are missing if you don't hit that mark, and where you have the liberty to play with it and do something new that nobody has ever done before. And again, because I didn't come through that typical academic environment, it's not just like a rehashing of the same dusty old academic ideas, but it's really really new stuff that and the irony is that in a lot of ways it's the same old stuff, because it's the stuff of stories, the stuff that God implanted in our hearts and our minds, I think, to understand the world through story. That's why he gives us the Bible as a story, right?
Right.
So a lot of it is really old stuff, but it's a new way of looking at it that has turned out to be really super helpful for people who are embarking on a novel project, which, as it turns out, is a lot of people.
And look, you didn't hold back. Like, I mean, I realized that in our relationship, I pay you by the hour and we go through some of this stuff, and you've got a variety of ways for people to engage with the information, but it's not like you held back in the novel matrix and said, well, I'm going to teach you part of it, but to get the rest of it, you need to whatever, whatever.
Yeah.
But I do want you to mention some of the resources that you have at the company, because there is an element that is missing from any book, and that is community and relationship. And I know that that's been really an important piece that you want to at least offer people if they're ready for it. So talk a little bit about some of the resources that might, as someone grabs that book, they read it, and then they're like, yeah, but I need community to help me finish this out. Talk a little bit about that.
And somebody was concerned. They brought that to me. They were like, nobody's going to come to your apprenticeship if you just give it all away. And I think that's not accurate for two reasons. One is that there's no substitute for that one-on-one a counsel and mentorship through the process, right? You've discovered that, Michelle. I mean, I can give you the information, and that's one thing, but it's totally different when you can work it out one on one with somebody. The second piece is that there is a lot more. And, I told that person, I was like, how awesome would it be if everybody before they even got here already knew the whole novel matrix thing, and then think about how far we could go in 2 years beyond if we didn't have to spend the first 9 months, just learning the stuff that's in this book. So yeah, like you mentioned, Michelle, at the company, which is located in Cambridge, Ohio, we have a bunch of different resources. So the one that is really the kind of the keystone of the whole thing is our full-time apprenticeship program. So we have apprentices come from all over the country to stay with us for 2 years in Cambridge, Ohio, and we teach them how to write. We teach them all about writing craft and things like the novel matrix and how to improve their work. We also a key is professional development in that program. So not only are they actually doing the writing here, but they're also developing a platform, and so they're doing social media and a blog and newsletters and learn how to do this stuff really well, not just for them, but also so that they can serve others and even serve the local church. There are a lot of local churches that could use somebody in the pews who knows something about social media and things like that. So they're being equipped in that way. And then thirdly, and really most important to me, is the spiritual development component of it. So it is a discipleship program that they're coming into, where we are challenging them to go back to the Word. Really, everybody grows up in a bubble, right? And then they come to a place like this, and we expose the bubble, and we say, "But what does the Word say?" And if the Word confirms that, awesome. But learn why the Word confirms what you believed. And if the Word, rebuffs that, then let's figure out why. And something has to change, right? Either you need to come to a new understanding of the Word, and your lifestyle has to change. That's usually the answer. Or are we misunderstanding the Word in some way, right? So they come in for 2 years, and this year we have students from Las Vegas and Michigan and Arkansas and just all over. So that really is open to everybody. Most of our apprentices tend to be kind of typical college age, like 18 to late 20s, something like that. But I'd love to see like a retired person who is looking for like a second mile vocational ministry to come and do that as well. We also have our ARC year programs, which is a part-time online 9-month program in which people
For
write
those of
a
us who can't
novel.
relocate to Cambridge, Ohio, right?
Exactly, exactly. Yep. And that's been a hugely successful program. We've seen a lot of really cool stuff come out of that. So that starts every fall. But then also, if you just go to the company's website, writers.company, we have workshops that are open to the public. We have classes that we're doing online just here and there on specialty topics and things like that. And right now, we're doing the 90-day novel challenge. We're running that now, but we'll run a couple of those every year. So if you're interested, really, it comes down to, if you want to write a novel, check it out. There's some level of commitment available to you there that's going to match your lifestyle, and it's going to be helpful in that.
Yeah, I agree. And all of the resources that I've been able to participate in, whether it's the gosh, I can't think of the term where we all submit a piece of writing and I can't remember what we call it.
Yeah, we call it writers workshops.
Writers workshops. And
Mhm.
thank you. And I've done that before. I have listened to your podcast. I've, read the blogs. I've interacted with some of the resources through my membership and then all of that. So like you said, there's just a variety of ways that people can interact with it. I want to go back to this piece of the Word, kind of where we started, right? But also where you
Yeah.
talked about that is such an important piece, because you don't want to just help people write novels. You want people to write novels that will impact the world for the kingdom of Christ. And that comes in at that level where we are familiar with what the Word says. We are familiar with our Bible. And so I share Bible interaction tool exercises on my podcast every week. I call them bites for short, Bible interaction tool exercise. It's just habits that I use to keep my time in God's Word varied. I tell my listeners all the time, I don't create them. I curate them. So I ask people like you who are reading the Word or even teaching others how to engage with their Word in new ways. What are some of the, or can you share a habit or two that you use, that you either teach or use in your own time, that you could share with my audience?
Yeah, definitely. I love that you do that, Michelle. I think that's so helpful. And so I love Martin Luther's Four-Stranded Garland. That's a big one that we teach around here. But the one I want to talk about today is, I think, probably more unique to me because it's born from my author's perspective. And so, when I read the Bible, I'm always curious to see the details that are unnecessary in the Bible. Because the biblical narrative is tight. Given the technology and the medium that the Bible was recorded in, they didn't include a lot of extra words. There's not a lot of world building, as we would say among authors, right? Like when Jesus tells a parable, when he tells the prodigal son, he's not like it was a dusty day in mid-May, and the clouds drifted. There's none of those details. So when I do notice a detail that it's like this isn't necessary to this story, then it draws my attention there, and you get to have a really fun experience with the Holy Spirit, kind of sussing out why that detail, why include that extra word there. So, for instance, a good example would be when Nicodemus comes to Jesus. It specifies that Nicodemus came in the night to visit Jesus, right? And that's an obvious one. We can figure that out pretty easily, that he was embarrassed or it was secret or something like that. But we see that same kind of motif throughout lots of the stories. Anytime there's an adverb in a story, it's unnecessary. So in the story of Peter walking on the water, Peter gets out of the boat and he's sinking and he cries out to Jesus. And the word says immediately Jesus reached out and grabbed him. And that word immediately is unnecessary to the story. It doesn't change the meaning of the story at all. But the author included that word immediately. The Holy Spirit inspired that word immediately for a reason. And so there's something to be learned there. But we even see that in Jesus's parables as well. I've been teaching on the parable of the tares and the wheat recently, and where the master sows the field with good seed, and then the enemy comes in and spreads weeds rather, and then the servants are figuring out what to do with that. And the point of the story is that there's going to be weeds and there's going to be wheat, and it's really not our job to do anything about it, right? We just focus on being wheat and getting more wheat, and the angels at the end of the age are going to sort it all out for us. But Jesus, even who is even more, doesn't do any world building, is really tight with his phrasing. He spends this whole paragraph that isn't explained in the explanation later about, and the men were sleeping and an enemy came and sowed these weeds. And it's like, Jesus, why did you include those details? Right? They're not important to the point that you explain later on. So they're like these little nuggets that are just dropped there, and they're extra. They're like precious stones that we really don't need in a garment to make it function. But there's something special there for us.
And intentional, right? Because that's
Exactly,
we know that God intends there to be something there. I love that. So that would coincide with my bite of making observations, but it adds a specificity to it as to what we're looking for. I really, really like that. Thanks for sharing that. That's so fun. I'm gonna
Absolutely.
it may show up in a podcast again later. I don't know.
Take it. It's yours. Yeah.
Now, listen, my listeners love Christian music. And so I'm wondering, is there a song that is especially meaningful to you right now?
Yeah. So this is an interesting question for me because I'm not a music person, which is even more interesting because I lead worship 5 days a week here at the company. And so, I play guitar and I lead worship, and I love to worship Jesus. I love to make music to God. But when I'm like alone in the car, I'm a silence kind of person. I just want to be alone, and like even, my wife will pick fun at me sometimes because I'll try to name who a song is by. I'll be like, that song by this person, and I'm never right.
Yeah.
Right. I never know who the song is by or anything like that. But one of my favorite worship songs for several years now is "Lord, I Need You" by Matt Mayer. And we did something really interesting last week with that. Something I think the Lord has been just impressing on our community. It's valid for everybody, but it's just something he's been making special emphasis of for us recently, is just the value of our corporate expression and what we do together. And so last week we sang "Lord, I Need You," which is not an uncommon song in our catalog, but we changed all the pronouns to plural. Our defense, our righteousness, Lord, how we need you. And just making that simple change, I think anytime we make a change like that, it's helpful because it helps us to evaluate the meaning of the words, especially songs that we know so well. But nonetheless, just with the way the Holy Spirit has had his hand upon what we're doing here, it really brought a lot of things together in a really beautiful way.
Thank you for sharing that. It's a good reminder that we need him and we need each other. And honestly, that's how he designed it. And so as we walk that out in community with one another, and that brings me kind of to the end where I am so thankful that God has brought us in community with each other. Again, albeit over technology, maybe one day we'll get out to Ohio, or when you come
Yeah.
back to Louisiana, maybe we can get you over here. Even though he can't pronounce New Orleans, he says New Orleans. It's okay. We're gonna let that go for
You
a
caught
minute.
me. Yep.
Yeah. But as my audience, my listeners, I know that you are going to want to get to know Brad better. So what I've done is I'm going to put all of his links in one place. And so if you go to michellenezat.com/Brad, I'm not going to make you spell his last name. We're just going to leave it at that. I'm going to have a link to Brad's website, his podcast, your Amazon author page that includes the novel matrix, all your social links. And then you have something special that you are willing to share with us that I'm also going to put in there. Can you tell us what you're going to give us?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I have some stuff on my website, bradpauquette.com, that you can download for free. But I'm adding the first 4 chapters of the Novel Matrix book. So if you're curious about this, if you're curious, I'm meeting a lot of people these days who don't read any craft books. Which I'm kind of one of them myself, actually. So I get it if that's you. And so like maybe this is piquing your interest, but you're like, I'm not really a craft book kind of person. I'd love for you to just be able to check it out, read the first 4 chapters, see if it's something that seems like it would be helpful for you. And yeah, it's just yours to keep and use. So please check that out.
Yeah. And I'm going to have links to all of that, all of the resources, and especially that one, because I really want people to read it and then buy it because it's really helpful. And then if you are my listener and you already subscribed to my email list, all of that information is already in your inbox. And so I encourage you to subscribe today. Thanks so much for coming on this special edition. I am so glad that my friend Brad gets to meet, that all of my friends, my listeners get to meet you, my friend Brad. So thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Michelle. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this special Friday with Friends edition of More Than a Song. Be sure to follow the podcast and subscribe to my email list at michellenezat.com to get premier notice of future special editions like this one. If you want to watch the full interview, you can catch it over on YouTube. Just search for Michelle Nezat TV. Until next time, take time to meditate on God's Word and consider His ways.